Hello and welcome. You're watching the Daily Report. It's Wednesday, December 22nd here in Korea. It's been about a month since the discovery of Omicron, and in our program today, we connect to a physician over in South Africa who was the first to raise alarm over the possible presence of this new variant. Here first is a global pandemic update with our Konsoa. So, what do you have for us on this Wednesday?
Sunny, COVID-19 infections here in Korea have gone up as they usually do on a Wednesday. Let's take a closer look at the figures. 7,456 cases were tallied as of 12 a.m. and that's an increase in domestic as well as imported cases. 91 imported cases, in fact, were reported this Wednesday. So if we take a look at our graph, although it is quite a jump from the day before, if we compare this figure to last Wednesday, it is actually an on-week drop in daily infections. Now let's move over to our map. We are seeing an increase in the capital region, especially in the capitals Seoul and Gyeonggi-do province, which are again back to the 2000s, and also most of the places in the country are seeing triple-digit figures of new infections. And with that, Korea has so far 583,065 COVID-19 infections, and now Korea is the 59th country with the highest number of infections in the world. Also, we've got 78 additional fatalities, raising the death toll to above 4,900. Now, the number of patients that are currently in severe or critical condition has hit an all-time high here now at 1,063. Moving over to the vaccination figures, we've got 43.7 million people in the nation who got at least one COVID-19 vaccine jab and 42.1 million who are fully vaccinated. Onto our additional or booster shots. So we've got 25.5% or 13 million who have gotten an additional dose. Let's take a look at the figures abroad. There has been a rise in infections in the past day with more than 798,700 new infections and also over 8,400 new COVID-19 related fatalities. Now, meanwhile, in Spain, there has been a record high of new cases with over 49,000 new infections here in Spain, and also the UK has reported again close to 90,000 new cases. And South Africa, meanwhile, although it has seen a four-digit figure of infections the day before, this country already again has now seen a five-digit figure with some 15,000 new cases. And although not on this table here right now, Belgium has become the next country that has hit the 2 million mark in total infections. And those are the general updates that I have for now, but I'll see you back in a bit. Sunny?
All right, so thank you for now. Right, that was the general portrait of the COVID-19 situation across the globe over the past 24 hours. Now for a closer look at the events here on the local front, I have Kim Yeon-sung in the studio. Yeon-sung, welcome back.
Glad to be here, Sunny.
Right, so as Soa mentioned, there has been a surge in the number of serious COVID-19 cases here on the local front. How is this reality affecting our medical sector, Yeon-sung?
Well, nationwide, there are fewer than 280 beds. The share of ICU beds in operation nationwide has dropped to under 80%, but more than 85% of beds are still full in the capital region.
And Yeon-sung, how are authorities seeking to respond?
Well, they're really working to amp up the medical response in the country. Authorities pledged to secure 25,000 more hospital beds by January. These extra beds will help treat moderate to critical cases of COVID-19. Government authorities are also designating public hospitals, including the National Medical Center, Seoul Medical Center, and the Veterans Hospital as COVID-19 care facilities. Authorities also warned that non-emergency medical procedures may be pushed back to focus on handling the climbing COVID-19 infections. Take a listen to what the South Korean Prime Minister had to say earlier today.
First, we'll secure enough beds so that even when there's 10,000 COVID-19 patients a day, we can continue treating them. We'll also send extra help for the medical workers on the COVID-19 front lines.
Right, Yeon-sung, so given plans to transform state hospitals into COVID-19 designated medical centers, what happens to non-COVID-19 patients who are currently admitted at these hospitals?
Well, Sunny, they're being moved to somewhere else. Some eyebrows were raised over this decision because these centers usually offer medical services to the underprivileged, but health authorities reassure the public that disruptions will be minimized in the process of transferring these patients to other available facilities.
Right. And are efforts also underway to boost the number of healthcare workers to attend to the growing number of patients?
Yes, exactly. With the additional beds and more hospitals, there needs to be more healthcare staff to operate them. Authorities are deploying more medical professionals to fill in the manpower gap in these healthcare sectors. They estimated that there needs to be an extra 1,200 people to fully man the expanded medical capacity. They're also sending military doctors to the front lines and training more than 250 nurses so that they're able to care for critically ill patients. Take a listen to the extra steps authorities are planning to take to help out the overburdened healthcare sector.
On top of that, we're going to send the medical staff that the Central Disaster Management Headquarters are currently recruiting. We're also going to make sure these hospitals have full-time workers rather than temporary workers.
Right. Now, Yeon-sung, I'm sure you'll agree, but it looks like, it goes without saying that healthcare workers are facing or bearing the brunt of this pandemic.
Exactly. And South Korean government is acknowledging their hard work and efforts, and they're hoping to repay them in higher wages and more benefits. Health authorities in Wednesday's briefing said that they're raising the pay for public doctors and nurses, as well as military physicians who are manning the front lines of COVID-19. Korea's health minister also paid tribute to all the hard work and sacrifices that have been made by healthcare workers. Take a listen.
Your dedication and hard work is the spark of hope that saves our people. With utmost respect, the government will assist medical workers and respond to the difficulties they face.
Finally, Yeon-sung, what's the latest on the Omicron front here in the country?
Right, so as for Omicron, there were 7 new cases detected in the country. This brings the total to 234 variant infections. Omicron cases have jumped 45-fold within just 20 days in South Korea. A new update on the Omicron tally will be announced this afternoon, but concerns are mounting as Jeollabuk-do province could become a new virus hotbed for the variant, following a cluster outbreak of 20 Omicron infections this week in the city of Iksan.
I see. Well, do keep us posted, Yeon-sung. In the meantime, thank you for that. I'll see you back on Thursday. Right, on the international arena, Omicron is making its presence felt in countries worldwide. And for more on this reality, Soa joins me at the desk. Soa, what do you have?
Sunny, as of latest, the World Health Organization says that at least 106 countries have reported of Omicron variant so far. And in some countries, it is already the dominant strain, such as in the UK, the US, Denmark, and Portugal. And more European countries are expected to be added to that list in the coming weeks. Now, meanwhile, in Spain, earlier I mentioned that Spain has recorded its highest ever daily infection caseload. Now, this country has not broken down the cases by variants, but there are reports saying that there also Omicron seems to have surpassed the Delta variant.
I see. And so over in Israel, I understand authorities there have reported their first Omicron-related fatality. Tell us more.
Right, Sunny. So Israel on Tuesday reported the first death of a COVID-19 patient with this new strain. This patient was a man in his 60s who was being hospitalized and was suffering from underlying health conditions. And he was vaccinated with 2 doses, but not a booster shot. And Sunny, I found it interesting that these reports in Israel said that he only had 2 shots. So this because the 3rd shot there is becoming the norm in Israel. Now, booster shots are what the country has been emphasizing faster than most other countries. And now the Israeli government is also planning to authorize a 4th COVID-19 vaccine dose. Prime Minister Naftali Bennett made that announcement late Tuesday, saying the country will pioneer with the 4th dose as it has been doing with the 3rd one. Medic personnel and citizens aged 60 and above will be subject to this new rollout, with a final health ministry approval expected within days. And now, Sunny, that we are hearing of even COVID-19 Omicron-related fatalities, not just in Israel, but also around a dozen. We heard in the UK now, and also just a day ago, we spoke about the US first Omicron-related death. Because of this, now there are also some studies suggesting that Omicron variant may not cause less severe illness than the Delta variant.
I see. And against that backdrop, so I see that some vaccine makers are seeking to better target Omicron.
So AstraZeneca, for instance, in fact, was quick to respond. It said on Tuesday that it is working with Oxford University to develop an Omicron target vaccine in case it is needed, and they are in their preliminary stages of producing such a vaccine. But health officials say that there is too little evidence on whether these kinds of vaccines are actually needed at this point. Let's take a listen to Europe's medicines watchdog chief on this.
Now, let me stress, there's no answer yet on whether we will need an adapted vaccine with a different composition to tackle this or any other emerging variant. We need to see more data on the impact of the variant on the effectiveness of the approved vaccines, as well as to gather further evidence on the transmissibility, the disease burden, a more granular impact on vaccine effectiveness, including against mild disease, severe disease, hospitalization and death.
What's also noted by the EMA is that there are more tools against COVID-19 than last year. We just spoke about how Novavax, for instance, was added to the list of approved vaccines by the EMA. So 5 vaccines and also 6 treatments against COVID-19 are available in the EU alone.
Right, that is a valid point. Now, so staying with the EU, a new vaccine passport guideline has been declared for this bloc. Tell us more.
Right. So the gist of this is an expiration date for COVID-19 vaccine passports. So starting in February, vaccine certificates among EU members will only be valid for 9 months without a booster shot. So the European Commission made that announcement on Tuesday as Europe is bracing for a fight against the fast-spreading Omicron variant, stressing the necessity for a safe and coordinated but also free movement. The new rule also includes the recording of the booster shot in vaccine passports. The EU recommends to get an additional dose 6 months after full inoculation at the latest. For now, reports say there is no limit to the validity of the passport after a booster shot, and that, I guess, because there still needs more studies to be done on how long these booster shots are effective.
Right. Over in the US, so I understand President Joe Biden has addressed the rampant spread of Omicron in that country.
That's right, Sunny. Let's take a listen to President Joe Biden's message that comes just days before Christmas, with more than 70% of new Omicron cases, of new COVID-19 cases, that is, being the Omicron variant in that country.
How concerned should you be about Omicron, which is now the dominant variant in this country, and it happened so quickly? The answer is straightforward. If you're not fully vaccinated, you have good reason to be concerned. Get vaccinated now. It's free. It's convenient. I promise you, it saves lives.
There you have it. Biden said, however, there is no need to panic, and reassured that fully vaccinated Americans can spend their Christmas with family and friends as planned, particularly those who got an additional shot. So the speech gave U.S. citizens a clearer picture of how to assess the current situation, as well as how to get ready for upcoming festivities. Another question that Biden addressed was whether the country is going back to March 2020, when the pandemic hit the U.S., answering with an absolutely no. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization says that the U.S. still has the highest number of new cases in the past week, but there was a 12% decline in the country. Now, when it comes to the total number of infections, the U.S. had the biggest caseload in the past week, from December 13th to the 19th, followed by the UK, France, and Germany. But when it comes to the UK, there's been a rise by 45%, and that, of course, due to the Omicron variant. Now, globally, there's been a slight decline in infections, and also new deaths dropped by 9%. So that's one positive sign we saw in the past week.
Right. Hopefully the decline will continue. All right. So thank you for the international coverage.
Anytime.
Plans are in the works to ease the property tax burden on owners of single homes amid escalating housing prices. Our Om Ji-young reports.
South Korea wants to relieve the tax burden caused by rising house prices. Finance Minister Hong Nam-gi said Wednesday that measures are being reviewed that will ease the property holding tax levy on single homeowners. The government and the ruling party are considering measures such as basing next year's taxes on this year's publicly assessed property values. The potential measures also include lowering the upper limit on property tax and gross real estate tax. But he said there's no plan to change taxes for multiple homeowners considering market stability, policy consistency, and fairness. He also said the country's housing market has been seeing a downward trend in prices in major regions, including the capital.
Although there has been contraction in the amount of transactions in the property market, price decreases have been seen in major regions. Cases of downward prices are expanding, and the market is transitioning into a downward trend.
Hong said actual trading prices in 4 districts in the Gangnam region have seen a downward trajectory and that estimated prices dropped by around 0.9% in November. He also said the cities of Sejong and Daegu have seen falling house prices for 21 and 5 consecutive weeks, respectively. He added that the government will continue to swiftly push the current policies on properties so that the downward trend can continue further next year. Hong also said the illegal flow of funds and the illegal registration of rental business to foreigners will be blocked. By March, the government will establish a program to keep track of and closely monitor illegal activities of foreigners in the property market. 엄지영, Arirang News.
A rather unhealthy trend, both for man and his environment, has been taking root here in the country over the past decade. The amount of food wasted is on the rise. Choi Min-jung has more.
South Korea has seen a noticeable jump in the amount of food waste over the past decade. According to the Korea Environment Institute, each person threw away an average of 407 grams of food waste each day in 2019. That's an increase of 20.4% compared to a decade earlier. When combined with waste that is not thrown away properly, the country produces an average of 21,000 tons of food waste every single day, up 26% from 10 years earlier. The Ministry of Food and Drug Safety says more than 5.4 million tons of food are wasted each year, costing around $920 million to process. The increasing amount of waste comes as more people are buying meal kits that are easy to prepare at home amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Watchers see this as the main reason for the increasing amount of food waste at food manufacturing sites. The problem of food waste has long been a global concern. According to the World Wildlife Fund's report in August, approximately 40% of food around the world is thrown away every year. The WWF stressed that food waste must be reduced not only to improve food security, but also to protect the environment. The organization estimates that 8% of global greenhouse gas emissions caused by humans are related to food waste. To address such issues, the UN has vowed to reduce food waste by 50% by 2030 under its Sustainable Development Goals. Meanwhile, experts in South Korea are hoping to see a reduction in food waste once expiration dates on food products are changed to consume by dates starting in 2023. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
In other news, relevant authorities here have reiterated their concerns over plans in Japan to release radioactive water from the Fukushima nuclear power plant into the sea. Kim Do-yeon has details.
South Korea has expressed deep concern to Japan after its electrical company, TEPCO, on Tuesday requested regulatory approval to release treated radioactive water from Fukushima nuclear power plant into the sea. South Korea held an emergency vice ministerial meeting and the country's nuclear safety chief affirmed their stance on the matter.
To share the main points of the letter, we requested that during the process of collecting opinions, in addition to Japan, other countries' opinions should be taken into account as well as while cooperating with the international community. In addition, we requested that relevant information should be transparent and Japan be cooperative and prompt to South Korea's request to confirm the release is safe.
This was the second time South Korea used its Nuclear Safety Commission as a means to send a message to Japan. The first time was earlier this year when Japan said it had decided to push for the discharge of more than 1 million tons of the water into the ocean. TEPCO's appeal for regulatory approval this time around was around 500 pages long, detailing how the water will be released as well as the extent of the dilution process. The firm said pumps would move the treated water from the tanks to the seashore and through a seabed tunnel before releasing it at a depth of 12 meters and about 1 kilometer out at sea. South Korean authorities plan on examining the appeal thoroughly and will request additional information. They will also strengthen its watch over the levels of radioactivity in the sea. Currently, it has 32 spots in coastal waters to check for levels of tritium and cesium, and it is planning to add 2 more spots, with more frequent checks being carried out. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Europe is looking ahead to a brutal winter as Russia appears to be limiting its gas supply to the region. Now, pundits claim the move is politically motivated. Moscow says it's purely commercial. Kim Yo-sun explains.
Amid simmering tensions between Russia and European nations, Moscow has decided to cut the flow of gas supplies to Europe. The move has sent prices surging as the continent prepares for a week of sub-zero temperatures. Over the weekend, shipments through the Yamal pipeline that runs through Belarus and Poland to Germany were at their lowest point in at least a month. Russian media outlets explain that daily shipments fell from 27 million cubic meters last Friday to around 5 million cubic meters over the weekend. In addition, westward gas flows through the pipeline stopped on Tuesday, according to Reuters, which added the gas may have been redirected back to Russia. While some Western politicians and pundits have accused Russia of halting gas deliveries amid political tensions over Ukraine, Moscow denies any connection. Some have also pointed out that Russia's move could be in connection to delays in the certification of Nord Stream 2, a Baltic Sea pipeline built to ship natural gas from Russia to Germany. A Kremlin spokesperson said Tuesday that this is, quote, a purely commercial situation. Europe is largely dependent on imported gas, with Russia supplying 40% or more of those imports. Kim Yo-sun, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. The U.S. population saw its growth dip to its lowest rate since the nation's founding. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, the country grew by only 0.1% as 392,665 were added to the U.S. population from July 2020 to July 2021. It cited the pandemic as the reason for the record low growth as the virus curtailed immigration, delayed pregnancies, and killed hundreds of thousands of people. The latest figure also marks the first time since 1937 that the nation's population grew by less than 1 million people. Also, in more than 24 states, deaths outnumbered births for the one-year span. The figure was most notable in the state of Florida, where deaths exceeded births by more than 45,000. Experts say while the U.S. may eventually see a decrease in deaths, population growth likely won't bounce back to what it has been in years past due to fewer births. Dubai's ruler Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum was ordered by the High Court in London on Tuesday to provide a British record of $733 million to settle a custody battle with his ex-wife over their 2 children. According to Judge Philip Moore, the massive sum is to ensure their lifetime security, as well as to compensate the ex-wife for the possessions she lost as a result of the marriage breakdown. Nearly $15 million per year will be given for the children's maintenance and for their security when they become adults. While the settlement is believed to be the largest public award ever ordered by an English family court, it's still less than half of the $1.86 billion Princess Haya bint Al Hussein originally sought. The financial settlement comes after Haya fled to Britain in April 2019, fearing for her safety after she began an affair with one of her bodyguards, a month after she had asked the sheikh for a divorce. During the nearly 7 hours of testimony, the 47-year-old ex-wife said a large one-off payment would allow for a clean break and remove the sheikh's hold over her and their children. Portuguese kite surfer Francisco Lufinha successfully crossed the Atlantic using only the power of kites to pull his small boat. The 38-year-old covered some 6,400 kilometers after setting out on November 3rd from Portugal and arriving in the Caribbean island of Martinique on Monday. The trip was made possible as he acquired fresh water for his trip using a hand pump to convert seawater while getting all the power needed on board using solar powers. The kite-powered vessel reached top speeds of over 30 kilometers per hour. With the recent accomplishment, Lufinia now hopes to be inducted into the Guinness World Records for the fastest Atlantic crossing in a kite boat. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
For those of you seeking solace amid pandemic-related restrictions ahead of Christmas and the New Year, here are a few special places in Seoul where you can truly indulge in the splendor of the city's night views. Do take a look.
Color of lighting hitting the building's exterior facade. A spectacular lighting festival that lights up the city has been launched in downtown Seoul.
Today I am at Dongdaemun Design Plaza, one of the major landmarks in Seoul. To celebrate the year-end and the New Year's holiday, this place has turned into an amazing nighttime view spot with some fabulous and colorful lights.
The inaugural Seoul Light event, a media facade festival, was held in Dongdaemun Design Plaza on December 17th. The iconic DDP in Seoul turns into a canvas of light, featuring a 12-minute video projection 4 times a day. Following COVID-19 protocols for safe viewing, all visitors must book a reservation in advance, and the total number of audience per session is limited to 99.
코로나 이 시기에 이런 행사 자체가 어떤 시민들한테 위로도 주고 희망을 줄 수 있는지가 저희 머릿속에 항상 화두였는데요. 이 앞에 보시는 미디어 트리를 통해서 또 보시는 작품을 통해서 시민들에게 이 어려운 시기를 함께 이겨나가자는 희망의 메시지로 열심히 준비해 보았는데요.
사실 이런 팬데믹 상황에서 우리 시민들이 모두 어려움을 많이 겪고 있는데요. 근데 그러면서 우리가 또 경험하게 된 어떤 새로운 기술들이 주는 가능성들에 대한 희망도 함께 겪고 있다고 생각을 합니다. 그래서 이런 메타버스나 가상 공간이나 그리고 다양한 기술들과 우리가 어떻게 조화를 이룰 수 있는지 그런 어떤 생명력에 대해서 좀 이야기를 하고 싶었고요.
Meanwhile, 100 2-meter-tall lighting trees are installed along the slope of the park to be reborn as DDP Light Garden. When you make a sound around the tree, the sensor detects it, and you can see the tree moving as if it were alive. This beautiful night view indeed attracts a lot of citizens.
여기 지나가는데 겨울왕국 온 듯한 느낌이라서 크리스마스도 다가오고 연말 분위기 물씬 나서 너무 좋아요.
조명도 너무 이쁘고 뭔가 사진 찍기 되게 좋은 것 같아가지고 저는 되게 좋았어요.
The night gets longer during the winter, and many people visit great nighttime view spots to spend some time with their loved ones or to take a walk. Recently, the Seoul Metropolitan Government selected 100 best night view locations in the city and published an online photo book.
서울시는 그간 서울 야간 경관 개발 위해 지속적으로 노력해왔고 근본 발간된 화보집을 통해 서울의 매력을 발견할 수 있게 되길 바랍니다. 코로나19로 어려운 시기를 보내고 계시는 서울 시민들이 가까운 야간 명소에 방문하여 아름다운 야경을 감상하며 지친 심신을 위로받고 힘내시길 바랍니다.
Another place where you can enjoy the splendid night view of Seoul is right here, the tallest building in South Korea. There are tons of things to see and enjoy, even during your elevator ride. It takes about a minute to go all the way up from the first floor to the 118th floor. Once you get to the 118th floor, you can overlook downtown Seoul through the world's tallest glass floor recognized by Guinness World Records. Enjoying the night view at a height close to 500 meters makes you feel as if you are walking in the sky.
요즘 코로나로 인해서 멀리 여행을 떠나지 못하시는 분들이 도심 속 랜드마크인 서울 스카이에서 그나마 조금씩 여유를 찾으시면서 즐기시기 위해서 조금 찾아주시는 것 같습니다.
Visitors walking on a glass floor are remembering their precious moments, looking at the city colored with lights in their own ways.
요즘 여행도 못 가고 많이 못 놀러 가는데 이런 데 와서 탁 트인 거 보고 할 수 있으니까 좀 시원해지는 마음도 있고 재밌는 것 같습니다.
If you feel low or depressed because of COVID-19, why don't you wrap yourself warm, go outside, and enjoy the marvelous night view to refresh yourself. This has been 신새벽.
It's been about a month since researchers in South Africa discovered Omicron, and already this heavily mutated variant is replacing the Delta in quite a number of countries. For more, I have Professor Kim Min-gyu from Yonsei University. Welcome back, Professor Kim.
Thank you for having me.
I also have Dr. Alice Hyung-Tan at Ms. Medi Women's Hospital live on the line. It's good to see you again, Dr. Tan.
Thank you for having me.
Also joining this session virtually is Dr. Angelique Coetzee, chairperson at the South African Medical Association. It's a pleasure to have you with us, Dr. Coetzee.
Thank you so much.
Professor Kim, we'll start here in the studio. Like I mentioned earlier, it's been a month since the emergence of Omicron. Based on what has been shared thus far, how does Omicron compare to the Delta?
Yes, it's spreading very fast. Doubling time is only about 2 or 3 days. And Europe and USA is experiencing the impact of Omicron. And I guess this situation in Korea will be similar by next month. At this time, a person who is vulnerable to Delta will be infected by Omicron by next month, I guess. And the case fatality of Omicron is not clear yet, but I hope that it is less than Delta variant. But because of this high speed, all the Korean hospitals might be occupied with Omicron patients, and that might result in an increase in the mortality. So we have to prepare for that.
Right, we do.
Yep.
Dr. Coetzee, you were the first physician to alert the world to the possibility of a new variant back in November after witnessing different clinical symptoms. Could you start by telling us a bit about your initial observations and also about the current Omicron situation in South Africa?
Yeah, thank you. That's a very important question. And I think this is actually the most important question because we need to get the clinical picture out there for the public to understand because they need to go and get help and get tested the moment when they experience what we normally see is they will wake up and they will have they would be fine last night when they went to bed. They will have a headache, body ache and pain, we call it myalgia, and they will feel extremely tired. You know, it's like when you get a severe flu, that type of body or muscle pain. So it starts more with a physical pain, you know, or physical symptoms in the muscles, a headache, and then, as I've said, this type of fatigue going with it. However, the most prominent symptom is not a running nose or a cough or a severe sore throat, except with the children. And herein lies the problem, because the symptoms are not expected, and people then not getting tested and don't go and see their healthcare worker. So by the time they then get to test, they've already spread this virus, and they might be, because if they have comorbidities, they might then be severely ill by the time they get to the healthcare workers. So it is extremely important that we educate the public around the symptoms. Then we educate the doctors to please test anyone coming in with any upper respiratory tract complaints. Doesn't matter how mild it is, please check and test, do a rapid test. What we also saw is that the rapid test, if you wake up this morning and you want to do today your rapid test, it might be false negative. So we advise them just wait 24 hours and do your rapid test. However, after 5 or 6 days, you need to do the PCR. And so we need to educate the people. If you can get that right, there should be less pressure on any hospital. But if the patient doesn't understand the clinical symptoms and what to look out for, we cannot win this.
Right. Dr. Coetzee, I understand researchers there have found that people infected with Omicron are less likely to end up in hospital and appear to recover more quickly. Could you tell us a bit about this? And also, do the symptoms that you mentioned earlier differ depending perhaps on the age of the patient?
So again, very important question. Yes, the symptoms stay the same. It's now my 5th week. I've seen more than 100 patients myself and treated them. Symptoms stays exactly the same. So the majority of people in the community will have milder illness. They will have this type of complaints. But it is important because I've noticed that because we say it's mild, people think they don't need to go and see a healthcare worker or a doctor. It's still important that you go and do that. We still need to make sure that you are clinically controlled, and especially if you are having other comorbidities. It's extremely important for these people. So what we have also seen is that the intensity of the headache is much less for people who's been vaccinated than unvaccinated. And what I have noticed is that the majority of patients, it's nearly equal between the age of 30, I've got them here, according to my stats, 31 to 50 years of age. It's and with between 51 and older, it's equal. It's so this is a disease that is more predominantly in the 30-year and up than in the younger generation.
I see. Meanwhile, Dr. Tan, this is something Professor Kim also mentioned. So authorities here believe Omicron will become the dominant strain on the local front within a month or two. Do you share this outlook?
Yes. Sorry.
Right. Could I? Thank you, Dr. Coetzee. But perhaps Dr. Tan could answer this first, and then we could come back to you, Dr. Coetzee.
Right. So regarding the transmissibility of the Omicron variant, the Korean CDC recently released data regarding transmission dynamics of the Omicron variant in our country. So the latent period of the Omicron variant is 3.6 days. The generation time is 3.1 days. Both are shorter than the Delta variant, and the secondary attack rate in households was 44.7%, which is more than double that of the Delta variant. So we have confirmation that the Omicron variant is much more transmissible than the Delta variant. And because our country, we do not pursue a zero COVID policy, it is really inevitable that this variant will become the dominant strain. In terms of the regional hotspots, the city of Incheon is where the first 2 cases of the Omicron variant were detected, and that they have led to a cluster of about 74 cases over 6 branches of transmission. Also, the Omicron cases are centered in the 2 southern provinces of our country, so the city of Iksan in the North Jeolla province, and the city of Gwangju and the South Gyeongsang province. These are the hotspots in our country. We have a total of 234 confirmed cases, but if you add the probable cases of Omicron, that number is probably closer to 300. And we have to keep in mind that test positivity in our country is 3%, which is on the high side for South Korea. The number of cases of unknown epidemiological link over the last 2 weeks is greater than 35,000 people. The effective reproductive number is still above 1, meaning that transmission is ongoing and increasing. And the booster uptake, if we look at the entire population of the country, is still only 25%. So I do agree that the Omicron variant will inevitably become the dominant strain and overcome the Delta variant in the near future.
Right. And very briefly speaking, Dr. Coetze, I'm assuming you do share the thoughts of Dr. Dan as well, of Omicron becoming the dominant strain in the weeks ahead. And what does that mean for our containment efforts, briefly speaking?
So, yes, I fully agree. So we need to go back to the basics of, vaccines, booster shots where necessary, and the masks and the social distancing, and stay away from crowds. That is the basics, and people doesn't listen. They don't hear what we are saying. And again, we need to educate the people out there regarding the symptoms. It doesn't help us to tell them that you're going to see a high increase of numbers, and our hospitals are going to be overflowed. And then you don't tell them what to look out for and what to do. We miss this in our education part. I'm always saying we speak about the virus, but we forget the most important part of the puzzle, and that's the people. So we need to educate the people on what to do, and the doctors, what to do when they see these patients.
Right, of course. Professor Kim, the World Health Organization says Omicron can evade vaccine-induced protection as well as the protection built after infection. Now, what do these words tell us about the efficacy of our current vaccines against Omicron?
If I follow the definition of WHO, the current RNA infections are effective against Omicron. They say if it's more than 60% of effectiveness, they say okay, they approve it. But as a clinician working at the Frontline in the emergency department, I wish we have something more satisfactory. And especially for the patients in old age with lots of underlying conditions like diabetes, cancer, and etc. Breakthrough infections after previous COVID-19 infection is rare. I would call it natural infection. And it seems the symptom seems to be mild, and there's another type of breakthrough infection after vaccination, and I think about half of the patients in Seoul right now is this kind of breakthrough infections after the vaccination, and vaccine is effective. Might be effective against Omicron, but still we need a booster, and the high-risk group needs a special care, and I wish that they keep the rules of social distancing by themselves.
Right, which is something Dr. Coetze also mentioned, right?
And we have to wait for the special drugs like Paxlovid from Pfizer and Molnupiravir from Merck,
which will probably be available here in the country early next year. Meanwhile, Dr. Coetze, what can you share with us about breakthrough cases as well as cases of reinfection involving Omicron in South Africa?
So remember, we are 5 weeks ahead of most of the people. And yes, we see the breakthrough infections. We see the reinfections. And what we have noticed with the breakthrough infections is it seems that 3 months after you had we haven't started with boosters yet, but 3 months after you had your last Pfizer, and a bit longer with Johnson & Johnson, we see breakthrough infections coming through. Again, symptoms mild, and their intensity not as severe. I always call the headache the mother of all headaches. So they don't have that intensity of their headaches. But it's there, it's 50-50, but that's what we are seeing in South Africa. Also remember, South Africa is not highly vaccinated. About 44% of our adult population are vaccinated. The younger people they're not really interested. So for us, it is not, it's not scary anymore. I think why we're much more relaxed is, yes, there's a high number of infections, and it's really a fast-spreading infections, as Prof said. But the majority of people can easily be managed. However, I have just yesterday seen my first complication of that I needed to admit with what we called COVID pneumonia. But this patient was tested, never come to see me. It's a 51-year-old with, he weighs 150 kilograms, diabetes and hypertension. And because some of our labs test and don't let us know that they have tested our patients, this guy slipped through. And he was tested positive on the 12th. And I only yesterday saw him and make the diagnosis of complications on Omicron.
I see. Hopefully he gets better soon, Dr. Coetze. Dr. Dan, over 40% of Israel's population has reportedly received a booster dose, and now the authorities there are planning on offering a fourth dose to those aged 60 and above and those with existing health conditions, that is. What are your thoughts on this?
Right. So this speaks to the issue of optimizing the dosing schedule for COVID-19 vaccines. And of course, this is still a work in progress. This is a new disease and the vaccines are new vaccines. But requiring multiple doses of a vaccine to get optimal immunity is nothing new. For example, for the human papillomavirus vaccine, women need to get 3 shots at 0 to 6 months. Young mothers will know that their children need to get 4 doses of a polio vaccine to be fully immunized. So I think we're looking at now the process of waning of immune levels, the natural decay that happens with time. We're also dealing with new variants that evade vaccine-induced and natural-induced immunity. And then we have the issue of elderly people, people with weak immune systems, immunocompromised population. They definitely need boosters to try to get their immune levels up to safe levels more than, say, a young, healthy individual. So the CEO of Pfizer several weeks ago, when the Omicron variant first emerged, did mention the possibility of requiring a 4th dose booster of the Pfizer vaccine. We will see in terms of the durability how long this 4th dose vaccine lasts, and of course whether or not it will be needed.
Right. Professor Kim, a new US study reportedly shows that breakthrough infections generate super immunity. Could you tell us more about this finding?
Well, very interesting. If you have a vaccine shot to people, they make immune cells to react against that vaccine, and you already have that cells ready to react. And if it's triggered by the real virus, it's natural that that immune cells do not hesitate a minute to make their own antibodies or whatever. And it might be an explanation that the vaccinated have a less or mild corona symptoms during the course of infection. But still, I would like that if the vaccine can prevent those breakthrough infections, that would be a better one.
Indeed, of course. Moving forward, Dr. Coetze, there is also much debate over the need to ensure equal access to COVID-19 vaccines. What do you propose to tackle this challenge?
Yeah, I think it's very important. And I've always said that no one can sleep safe if Africa is not vaccinated. So I think one of the prudent things would be if we start with booster vaccines, because that is, I think, also where a lot of unhappiness is coming from, is to say, okay, for each and every one you do a booster in the first world countries, let's donate 1 booster, I call it a booster buddy, in the lower income states, and with that you do your social responsibility towards the poorer income countries. So that would be something I think that is extremely important. We also need to make sure that with all these nice vaccines that's out there, it's very difficult to use them in Africa, because a lot of them need special temperatures and fridges, and Africa's got a problem there. So yeah, but everyone needs to have at least one dose of vaccines in their arms before, in the whole world, before we can start to feel safe.
Right, indeed. Dr. Dan, given the lockdowns in some countries and the tough COVID-19 prevention guidelines in others, what are your prospects with regard to hopes for a return, perhaps, to some semblance of normality amid COVID-19?
Well, we would hope that by the end of 2022, there might be a better picture. I'm not that optimistic, but I do think that the impact of the disease in our communities, in our lives, will be dramatically different, will be decreased over the course of the next year. And the reason why is because I have great hopes for the antiviral oral medications, Paxlovid and Molnupiravir, especially because both companies have agreed to patent waivers through the medicines patent pool. And so hopefully there will not be the supply and distribution issues that we have seen with the COVID-19 vaccines.
Right.
And I also think that when we increase vaccine manufacturing through having vaccine manufacturing hubs in Africa and in South America, that will improve supply. We also have in the pipeline second-generation COVID-19 vaccines that address some of the issues in terms of being able to distribute these vaccines in a non-cold chain manner. They're easier to store. And if we could get a universal coronavirus vaccine developed, that would really be the game changer. And I think that's something that all countries should make a big push for, is to develop a universal coronavirus vaccine that will help end not just this pandemic, but prevent the next one from forming as well.
Right, and against that backdrop, very briefly speaking, Dr. Coetzee, are there any words you would like to share with our viewers across the world amid the spread of Omicron?
First of all, know the symptoms, know your own health status, and go and get tested and get, healthcare, any healthcare person to just double check that you are okay. Do not stay at home and think you're going to get over it because we say it's a mild disease. It's a mild disease because we don't need everyone in ICU, but you still need to be examined by a doctor. So please, and I ask the doctors, please test patients. Even if they say they've got a post-nasal drip, test them. It's most probably COVID, Omicron.
Right. All right, Dr. Coetzee over in South Africa, thank you very much for your thoughts. Dr. Tan, as always, thank you for being with us today. And Professor Kim here in the studio, thank you for your insights.
Thank you so much.
Right, well, that is all for this edition of the Daily Report. The simple guidelines, as Dr. Angelique Coetzee over in South Africa has said, is to wash your hands, wear your mask and watch your distance. See you on Wednesday.